Well, here we are another day. The war in Iran is escalated, and that really worries me. And I say that as somewhat of a veteran of the peace movement. A, a war with Iran has been on the table for a long time, and it's really scary that Donald Trump, who campaigned on a non-interventionist foreign policy, has now fallen into the escalation trap. And when you look at the history of the United States in the Middle East over the last 25 years, the standard critique is that we received blowback. Okay, this is the debate that we need to have between people like Max Blumenthal on one side and people like the late David Ray Griffin on another, because while Max Blumenthal sees it as the management of savagery, if I remember correctly, David Ray Griffin, he saw it more in terms of narrative control. Mhm. And, this is Dr. Kevin Barrett's Christmas gift that just keeps on giving. 9/11 is the Christmas gift which just keeps on giving. And there's no end of the mileage elites will milk from it. And were the truth about September 11th to have been generally known, it's inconceivable that this war with Iran would be happening right now. So that's why I disagree with a lot of people on the left who say that what does it matter the truth about 9/11, you know, your Noam Chomsky's and your Naomi Klein's. What does it matter? Um, we need a definition of Maoism, because that's something I refer to a lot in my writings. Um, when I think of Maoism, maybe I think of Genghis Khan or Ho Chi Minh, Chairman Mao, of course. But this idea that you mow everything down and you raise the communist flag, the hammer and the sickle. This is a caricature of all democratic movements that Marco Rubio uses in his flowery speeches, like at the Munich Security Conference. I myself have lived in the shadows of two Maoist movements, one in Peru and the other in Colombia. And I heard stories. Sometimes I'd stay up late in the night hearing stories about the Shining Path in Peru. Sometimes it's called a civil war, but it's not really a civil war. These are just terrorist movements, or the FARC in Colombia. Mow down everything in the path. These are insurgencies. But in the history of the 20th century, these have actually been quite rare. If you listen to Marco Rubio, they're the norm. Now he wants to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. What's this? Again, he uses this flowery rhetoric. He published an article in the Wall Street Journal saying the United States needs to withdraw from the International Criminal Court because it could be used to prosecute Americans. This whole structure of international law, the U.S. set up after World War II. And the U.S. has controlled the International Criminal Court. They've controlled the United Nations. They've controlled The Hague. But now it's being, this whole framework of international law is being framed as something that is liberal and woke. Mhm. So the U.S. is on the decline. China is on the rise. And the entrance of China on the geopolitical stage as an economic powerhouse shows us that mixed economies work, even if they do tend to leave. Well, China tends to leave human rights on the cutting room floor. I don't think that's a characteristic in general of mixed economies. But there hasn't been a lot of mixed economies to look at because the United States has crushed them all throughout the 20th century. But even those examples from history or the present time that are called economic miracles, like Prussia in the 19th century, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Singapore. These countries develop export economies, but balancing the needs of their domestic populations. So it wasn't the companies that said, no, we got to invest in infrastructure, we got to pay our fair share of taxes, we got to pay workers a living wage. No, it was the government that acts as a buffer between state and private power. A lot of people that think the government is bad and the government does a lot of bad things, they want to throw the baby out with bathwater. Say, no, mixed economies work. The United States is a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich. So the US has overstretched its militarism. This might be one of the reasons why they want to merge with Israel and merge all the intelligence apparatus and military development, defense industries, merge it with Israel. Because then Israel can be the battering ram to an increasingly declining US empire. So Americans want a less militarized country. So if the United States is supposed to be a democracy and Americans want less military, then are we really a democracy? And this kind of reversal to a 19th century style naked imperialism by the Trump administration. We're the top dog, and anybody who doesn't go along is a loser. And don't screw up because that means you're a sucker and we're going to get you. It's just a really kind of blatant social Darwinism. It's really sick. And it doesn't really correspond to the reality of how things are now, a multipolar world where the United States is not the only center of power. There are other civilizations, other poles in the world, the rise of the BRICS alliance, the rise of Russia on the world stage. So the US acts as if there's sovereignty for them, but not for anybody else. They are, in fact, the leader of global arrogance. And we don't know if there's going to be an economic crash in the next few months, the next few weeks. The Strait of Hormuz is closed, and that means that the US has come to an end of their special petroleum reserves. I guess the United States refines its own diesel, but they need to get it from the Middle East. And so we don't know what's around the bend. But a lot of the economists that I listen to, a lot of the voices that I really respect, the geopolitical podcast sphere, they say that we're headed for an economic disaster. And recent actions by the Department of War and by the Trump administration has assured that once again the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And the Baba Mendez Straits is also going to be closed. And are we ready for an economic crisis? How could they be doing this? Well, you know that the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos and the Peter Thiels of the world, they're going to be making money off the disaster. They're disaster capitalists. So there is a kind of logic to it, there's a sick and sinister logic.